Okay, we are on YouTube live.
Okay.
Hello, I warmly welcome you to our third webinar by the Academy of Space Renaissance International. My name is Sabine Heinz and I'm the person responsible for our webinar series. And on this wonderful, I warmly welcome you to our third webinar by the Academy of Space Renaissance International. My name is Sabine Heinz and I'm on this responsible for our webinar series. You have this web echo too?
Please, everybody close the audio of your YouTube window, or we will have several echoes. Okay.
Okay. On this wonderful September 20th, I'm delighted that you have come, and I would like to introduce our guests. First of all, Bernard Foying, our president. Welcome, Bernard. And
welcome from Europe, but
yes.
also with a very good thought for our Chinese friends and also all our colleagues worldwide. So it's a very great topics tonight. I call it Incredible China, and I had some chance to collaborate with Chinese astronomers already 30 years ago when we brought a European instrument on their largest telescope, and more recently we had also the chance to collaborate with our Chang'e colleagues. When we had even our Smart 1 mission around the moon, we sent our Smart 1 data to some Chinese ground station, and from that we had a good collaboration agreement with China, and ESA helped to get twice as more data from a Chang'e series of missions. So, and now, okay, just 3 months ago, we had the Tiangong space station, and we had the crew going there that just returned 2-3 days ago. So a lot is happening in China. So I'm looking forward to what Jacqueline Myrrhe is going to tell us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. I also would like to send a very warm welcome to Adriano Autino, Vice President of SRI. Welcome, Adriano.
Thank you very much, Sabine. You are wonderful as always. And okay, we are going to hold this webinar this night, a lecture by Jacqueline about the China space program. I'm very happy to have her with us, and I think we will run her presentation and she will only talk because maybe there are some problems with the connection. However, I think we will succeed.
I think we will solve every problem. And I would like to welcome Barbara King. She's also a member of SRI and working actively in our Space Renaissance Art Group. Welcome, Barbara. Hello.
Unmute, please. Unmute.
Hi, y'all. Very nice to see you. Will we have to use unmute when we're in space?
Okay.
Still be reminding each other to unmute?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, nice word. And welcome, Julio Recente from Brazil. Julio?
Hello, Sabine. Hello, audience. It's a great pleasure to be here in this audience. And congratulations for our friends from China.
Okay. And last but not least, all the more cordially, our presenter today, Jacqueline Myrrhe from Neubrandenburg. Welcome, Jacqueline.
Hello, good evening.
Before I leave the stage to you, I would like to say a few words, introductory words about you for our audience. Jacqueline told me that the presentation is a result of the work of the European Chinese Go Taikonauts team, group of space enthusiasts observing the Chinese space program for 20 years. The talk is given by Jacqueline Myrrhe, space journalist from Neubrandenburg in Germany. And Jacqueline has 22 years of experience in consultancy and publishing books, and she also writes for the space magazine Raumfahrt Konkret. This is a magazine, the last edition, last version, and she has also an article in it about the Chinese Mars mission. And she is since 2010 reporting on the Chinese space program Go Taikonauts. Also, she has accumulated 20 years of working as contractor for the European Space Agency, where she has been assigned to different functions such as analysis of international exploration plans, science database curation, reporting, content provider, outreach and communication, and space education. Jacqueline, the stage is yours.
Oh, nice.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Now, all technical issues tonight are up to me, so I apologize for that. And also to free up some bandwidth, I go now out of the audio.
Yes, I will share the screen with your presentation right now.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah, if you could help me in that, that would be good. And I hope you can understand my audio. Good. Very good.
Yes, that's fine. Just tell me when I have to go ahead with the slides. Okay.
Yes, indeed. And also, it can happen that I get dropped out of the internet every now and then. So don't despair, I reconnect. So in case there is some trouble, I will be with you as soon as I can again. So just to warn you, I'm sorry for that, but I'm not in my usual office place today. So that's why it's a little bit of a hiccup, but I'm sure we will manage. Good. Yeah, thank you very much for this introduction. So not much remains for me to say about my own person. So please then go ahead. You can already click up onto the next slide. What Sabine mentioned, so I'm a publisher and I write content about the Chinese space program in different magazines. The one is here, Raumfahrt-Konkret, and if you please go ahead, the next one. That's our little team Sabine mentioned. So indeed, yes, we are observing the Chinese space program already since 2 decades. And in the beginning, it was more our desire to have something in English language. So just to build the bridge between the 2 languages and the 2 cultures, and to make the Chinese space program available for the Western audience. So please, can you go ahead? Right, that's the publication Sabine also mentioned, Go Taikonauts. It's a newsletter reporting about the quarterly news out of the Chinese space program. But in the meanwhile, there are also other sources which got established recently. And if somebody really wants to know on a weekly basis what's on in China about the space program, I can recommend the Dongfang Hour. That's a YouTube channel of 2 young, dynamic, and very eloquent young men who are explaining everything about the Chinese space program on YouTube in English. So please go ahead. Right, my presentation today, it's extremely classic, divided in 3 parts: history, present, and the future. So what else can you say if you want to introduce your audience to the overall picture? So my aim today is to introduce you to the Chinese space program and enable you to watch it with your own eyes and to have an educated knowledge about what's going on and what it is about and how can you evaluate the programs which are currently running. So, and I hope that this is something we can achieve tonight. Please go ahead. History, indeed. Part 1. Next one, please. Right. So indeed, to understand any nation's space program, it is necessary to take a look at the context, look at the economic situation, and look at the society in that particular country. And this is even more true for China, which started first space developments after World War II, but profoundly reviewed the fundamental strategy for its national space program at the turn of this millennium. But most important, however, is that at the time when Western nations in Europe or in the US or in Japan enjoyed economic development and prosperity, the Chinese economy rode on a roller coaster during the periods of the Great Leap Forward. That's one period one should remember or keep in mind. And then, of course, the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution. Initiated in 1958, the Great Leap Forward was meant to catapult China within 15 years into an advanced industrial nation. Unfortunately, just after 3 years, the economy of the country was broken, and the following 5-year plan brought some relief until in 1966, the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution took its course. And you know, I don't need to say much about it. That was the time period when intellectuals and academics got persecuted, and the country lost a whole generation of its best talents. The economy during the Cultural Revolution did not completely stand still, but progress did. And only after the death of Mao Zedong in 1976, so 1976, a year to remember, the situation would change. But China's first space efforts are embedded into these dramatic decades of the nation's post-war development. And then we have a look at the very first milestone in China's space development, and that's the first independent satellite launched. So please, can you advance to the next slide? As an outcome of the Korean War, China felt under nuclear threat and asked the Soviet Union for technical assistance in the development of its own nuclear capabilities, and that was including long-range missiles. And the Chinese request was granted by the Soviet Union. However, later in 1957, the Soviet Union launched its first Sputnik 1, and Mao Zedong, the great helmsman, was very impressed by that. So he said, I also want something like that for my nation, and preferably with the support of the Soviet Union. And for China, the importance was that it wanted to catch up with leading technology developments in the world. And it was never driven by a race as compared with the competition between the Soviet Union and the US. So the Chinese Academy of Sciences set up a task force for the technical and scientific development of an indigenous satellite. And it connected this with a long-term and comprehensive national satellite program. Considering the low state of technology by that time, China wanted to use this satellite project as a promoter, as a with an objective to develop technical progress. But the Soviet Union wouldn't support those efforts, so there was no assistance in the civil space sector. And even worse, because of the Great Leap Forward and too few allocated resources, rarely any material, a very little workforce, it was impossible for the Academy of Science to succeed in this national satellite project. Then in 1966, the Cultural Revolution deeply impacted the Chinese society and shook its foundations. As I mentioned before, the intellectuals were targeted and scientific institutions became places of conflict and violence. Under those circumstances, the Academy of Sciences and other institutions involved in space developments asked the Communist Party of the People's Republic of China to protect their institutions with the help of the military. Mao Zedong approved this request, and since that moment, the Chinese space program and the People's Liberation Army were tied together and have remained in tandem or tied together until today. So this is a very important fact to remember when we talk about the Chinese space program and its involvement with the army. Finally, after 12 years of hard work, China launched its first satellite, Dongfang 1, on 24th of April, 1970. It was just a 173 kilogram satellite. And instead of having a scientific payload on it, the only task the satellite could fulfill was singing the heroic Chinese song, "The East is Red." So this is where the name comes from. So it was a propaganda instrument and not the starting point for a solid, sustainable science program. China, however, became the 5th nation in the world capable of placing a payload into orbit. Quite an achievement under the circumstances and by that time. However, 1970, do you remember? 1970, it was the year when lunar explored the moon, when Verena 7 soft landed on Venus, and Apollo 13 was able to make it home to Earth. Can you please advance to the next slide? And then I will talk a little bit about the next milestone in the Chinese space history, the development of a geostationary satellite.
Jacqueline, your audio is gone. We cannot hear you at the moment.
Okay, I hope I have you back. Can you
Yes,
hear me?
you are back. Yes, you are back.
I'm sorry. This was one of those dropouts, so I hope not many more will follow tonight. However, I spoke in the first part about the development of Dongfang, and I wanted to go on now with the next milestone, the geostationary satellite, and I think this is where I lost you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. That's one too fast. Can you please go one back? Right, that's the right one. Thank you. After the end of the Cultural Revolution in 1976, Deng Xiaoping was responsible for education, science, and technology. That was one of the 4 modernizations which he thought is the most important. So Deng became famous in illustrating his idea for a geostationary satellite in a meeting in 1978, when he tried to persuade his comrades to go for a communication satellite program by saying, if we invite a good teacher to give a lecture in the great hall of the people, only 10,000 people can hear it. But if the same teacher were to give that lecture on television and everyone had the equipment to receive it, that's a classroom of unlimited size. With that, Deng Xiaoping succeeded in convincing his comrades, and the geosatellite program went through. At a certain point, Deng even wanted to buy a communication satellite from the US. However, his initiative did not work out, and the self-set deadline for a launch in 1980 was slipping. So again, the insight prevailed that instead of relying on support from other countries, China has to find and go its own way. Also, Deng was quoted by saying that China can buy 1, can buy 2, or even 3 satellites. But at the end of the day, a big nation such as China cannot buy satellites forever. Finally, China's first geostationary satellite launched on the 8th of April in 1984, making China the 5th geostationary nation in the world and enabled space applications for economic development of the nation. So just for recapitulation, in 1984, the Salyut 7 space station was operational and the 3rd space shuttle was put into service. The next milestone in the history And the last one in my illustration of how it evolved in the decades before the turn of the millennium is the manned space flight project. And may I please ask you to go to the next slide. China's human spaceflight program came late into being, since its usefulness for the national and economic development was less obvious. Deng Xiaoping was interested in space applications, clearly, but he said that China should not participate in the space race, and instead we should focus our energies on urgently needed practical satellite applications. On 23rd March 1983, US President Ronald Reagan held his SDI speech. In China, this speech led to discussions on what is the role of science and technology for a country's national development? Question mark. In 1986, the legendary document, An Outline for National High Technology Planning, the so-called Plan 863, was published. It was approved and budget was allocated in the same year, in 1986. From that moment on, the manned spaceflight program served as an ambitious project that would develop a national space industrial infrastructure and promote the education of all the required talents and specialists needed for that. Finally, in 1992, the Standing Committee of the Politburo approved the space station program and declaring the Chinese space station the core of China's human spaceflight efforts. So in 2003, China would become the third nation in the world capable of human spaceflight in 2003. For historical context, in 2003, the assembly of the International Space Station was already in full swing. Also, as a last note on this, very important, 10 years later, so in 2013, so 10 years after the first manned spaceflight, China fulfilled a big legacy of high symbolism when during China's fifth human mission with the Shenzhou 10 flight, female crew member Wang Yaping succeeded in turning Deng Xiaoping's vision of a classroom of unlimited size into reality. From aboard the Tiangong-1 Space Lab, she delivered a science lesson to 60 million Chinese students from space. So, with that said, we leave the past and we continue to advance into the present. Please, can you advance the slide? Oh yeah, sorry, that's a little summary. So I just tried to illustrate a little bit. So when you look on the timeline from the decades after World War II, so you see the economic, it's just symbolic, but it shows the economy is the graph on this grid, which is going up and down. And only after the big opening up, it does go into a progressive development, but the Chinese space achievements are really still a legacy of those crazy decades after World War II, and they are just a heritage of this time. And just to emphasize this again, despite the struggle and despite the difficult times, China achieved the milestones for a space nation to establish itself as a respected space nation. Thank you. And then we go now ahead to the present. Right, part 2, present. One more slide, please. Right, so we are arriving in the time now. The economic success, China's economic success at the turn of the millennium not only provided China with the self-confidence and self-esteem to give science and technology, and with that, of course, give space a fundamental new orientation and direction to meet the needs of the future of the nation. Since 2001, 4 white papers on space activities published in parallel with the respective 5-year plans explained the achievements and objectives of the national space activities. So if somebody wants to know what China is doing in space, look into the white paper and then you know. It's very brief, it's very summarized, but this is where China explains what it has achieved and what it is intended to do for the near future. However, the most important message reads, I quote, the Chinese government has all along regarded the space industry as an integral part of the state's comprehensive development strategy. And this is very important. Space is not there for the sake of itself. Additionally to the white papers, in 2009, the document Space Science and Technology in China, a roadmap to 2050 was published. For that roadmap, experts analyzed the strengths and the flaws of China's space community, but also the worldwide trends in space and technology. And by doing this analysis, they came up with a long-term plan and goals and defined the steps necessary. Included that science and technology have to address the needs of both the nation and the society. The continued growth of economy and national competitiveness, the development of social harmony, and the sustainability between man and nature. So I repeat, so space, including technology, or let's say science and technology, including space, they have to serve the nation and the society, first point. They have to serve the economy and the national progress. And of course, they have to serve the social harmony and the sustainability of man and nature. Science, technology, innovation, and management have to be interconnected with the economic society base. Space is not there for its self-service or its own purpose. It has to become a tool for the benefit of the Chinese society and the achievement of the overarching goal of and synergistic efforts as laid out in the roadmap. An idea I found extremely interesting and fundamentally important, that growth by purely extending the economic production had reached its limit. China's economic and social development will largely depend on science and technology through scientific discoveries, through the realization of so-called mega-project. Strategic aims of the roadmap are in accordance or are joined with the principles of the white papers. And a last thought on this aspect, another interesting quote from the roadmap reads like that: the past 250 years. The past 250 years in industrialization has resulted in the modernization and the of life of less than 1 billion people, predominantly in Europe, North America, Japan, and Singapore. Then life grew to 3 billion people, including over 1 billion Chinese, doubling or tripling the economic increase. Quite a statement from my perspective. So for making this happen, space science and space technology will be the best available tool. So basically what we witness today, is that China has developed a robust, comprehensive and strategically oriented space program in order to serve its overall national development. Can you please go ahead by one slide? Oh, I think you can click once more. All right, yes, that's what I wanted to show. Just
Yeah, we have to apologize, but the connection is not very proper between New Brandenburg and the world. Germany is still trying to activate the digitalization and to develop it.
But, yeah.
I feel embarrassed, but
there's a beautiful slide that we can analyze because it can show you the number of astronauts and the whole achievement, you know, in a 20 years time scale. That's very impressive. All the Chinese achievement in developing launchers, ground systems, in the human space flight, also in planetary, lunar and planetary exploration. So that's really, it's worth 1,000 words. This,
yeah, I see also that here an error has occurred, but I hope we are back.
Yes,
can you write me in the live chat if we are back?
Yeah, we will.
Ian? Are you back in the...
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, you can say, yeah, we can see on this slide the illustration of, for instance, the first lander in 2013 of China, Chang'e 3. Then you had Chang'e 4 in 2019, and then we had the sample return, Chang'e 5. And we can also see the Martian lander with the Zhurong rover on the Martian surface. So these are some very impressive planetary achievements. You see also the navigation system, Beidou. You see the development of a series of launches. So yes, that's a beautiful slide to look at. And now they are very also, yes. And you see the astronaut that just came also from the space station.
Jacqueline,
I think Jacqueline is connecting now. So
yeah, she's connecting. She's coming back. We have to apologize to the audience. Thank you, Ian. Also, the signal is back to the audience.
Yeah. Good.
So I think she is back. Jacqueline, are you back?
She's connecting.
So yes, I'm connected.
Yes.
Sorry for that.
Yeah, good.
But somebody knows that once I have finished one part, we have to have a break. So this was.
Okay, this was a beautiful break. But it was a slide which is so full of information. We were commenting a bit on it. So it shows the beauty of all the achievement. So it's great that you come back now. Welcome back, Sultana.
Sorry,
yeah, don't worry.
Embarrassed, but it's the internet connection here. So
that's live TV. Yes.
Now, yeah, no, but it's not good. I even walked another 24-hour ticket for the connection, and the one which I tried first, and that's even worse than the free Wi-Fi now. So but I'm in the east of Germany, so don't worry. It's Germany and digital doesn't go very well together. That's the problem.
So, but the floor is yours.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So yeah, indeed. So this is where I finished, and this is where I thought, think I lost you, that this slide indeed shows very well how China has developed a very versatile and very streamlined program which supports the national development. And then the question I would like to pose now to come to the last part of my presentation is, what has worked for China? Is that something what could be as a model or as an inspiration for the global context. So please, if you can advance to the next slide. Here you can have a look for people who want to have a little bit of an in-depth view on this roadmap, because it's quite smartly done. So it really interconnects fundamental science, it interlaces space technology applications. So whenever one step in the development is achieved, it shows in what can be done actually with the technology you have developed at a certain level. What does that serve for, and what do we do with it? I mean, we in this sense, what can China do with it? And once this first step is achieved, then you advance to the next one. Then you make this achievements available for the next step of space science and application. So that's quite a graphical overview where you could spend a little while to read and draw your own conclusions out of that. So I only wanted to show it here, that it is existing, that is something for people who have a more in-depth interest, and I can recommend to have a look at it. So please, the next one, the next slide is also, yes, I thought I left it in, but I took it out. It was actually no, please one back. Oh yeah, no, you stay here, you stay, thank you. Right, yes, so let's advance to the future, or to what is happening now and will reach into the future. Now, after China had proven that space infrastructure and space technology is a successful driver for economic and societal development, it offered space resources to other nations. And this is what I want to show with this slide. So China initiated several space projects which ask for international participation and to support the build-up of space capabilities in non-space-faring nations, and to offer cooperation opportunities for advanced nations, so both sides, to go international with nations who know already what space is good for, and to join with nations to show them that space capabilities are quite useful for any nation to make progress and to develop. So examples for that are the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, UNOSA, where China offered the access to its Chinese space station for all member states of the United Nations Office for Outer Space. No, actually for all United Nations member states. Another initiative is that China offers payload opportunities within its lunar exploration program, and this is probably something Bernard could refer about for hours. So to him for the discussion, to give us a little bit of an insight into that. And another point, which is quite unique to China, that it is very interested in training African nations, to train engineers there, to build satellite ground stations and establish satellite manufacturing facilities. Another very important initiative is among the BRICs states, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, where those 5 states are currently building up a remote sensing satellite constellation and share the data and applications among those 5 BRIC nations. And then a word to APSCO. APSCO is the Asia Pacific Space Cooperation Organization, which is an intergovernmental space organization, also something where Bernard would probably say immediately, yes, intergovernmental space organization. I know this model, and indeed it's very similar to what ESA is doing, but APSCO is a regional organization for the Asia Pacific region. So it's headquartered in Beijing, and it aims at capacity building in its member states, which includes training for space experts, but also focuses on space applications or on the Beidou satellite navigation system for supporting the Belt and Road region, which I would like to mention in a minute. Yeah. Then worth to mentioning is also Beidou. That's the Chinese satellite navigation system. And here, the Chinese government set up 3 mechanisms for international Beidou cooperation, and encouraging commercial actors to follow the governmental international relationships. So there are a China Central Asia Cooperation Forum, there's a China-Russia Cooperation Forum, and there's a China-Arab Cooperation Forum, and all those 3 fora are related to satellite navigation. Please, can you advance for the next slide? So very few words on what I already mentioned about the United Nations CMSA, China Manned Space Agency initiative on joint opportunities on board the Chinese space station, which is right now under development or in the process of assembly. So China offered to use the Chinese space station for joint research, for the joint development of modules. It also offered to the United Nations to train and fly astronauts from the United Nations member states, and it offered to share technical know-how. So it all was initiated in 2016 when Yang Liwei, China's first man in space, told media on the occasion of China's first National Space Day. He said that payload has been reserved on the Chinese space station, due to enter service around 2022. So yes, we are seeing it right now, that it becomes operational. So China has reserved payload opportunities on the Chinese space station for international projects and foreign astronauts. Upon request, China will also train astronauts for other countries and jointly train astronauts with the European Space Agency. The future of space, and this is, I think, this is where I would like to stress what he said and what I consider as an important aspect of when the first astronaut of China says that it has quite an overarching importance. So that the future of space exploration lies in international cooperation. It's true for us, in a sense, it's true for China, and it's true for the United States too. China will not rule out cooperating with any country, and that includes the United States. So the first announcement of opportunity within the framework of the United Nations was established, and 42 applications were submitted from public organizations or from private institutes. And overall, those 42 applications came from 27 countries. UNOSA, so the United Nations and the Chinese Manned Space Agency together selected the best proposals, and 9 experiments were accepted for entering the preparation and implementation. Currently, the United Nations and the Chinese Manned Space Agency are considering a second announcement of opportunity. So we all know that the lifetime of the International Space Station is limited, like with any space station. However, the Chinese space station, with just at the beginning of its operational life, has the potential to become the world space station. Can you please advance to the next slide? I mentioned already the 5 BRICS countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And this is an association, BRICS is an also association of emerging economic powers who are trying to find its place in a multipolar world. And I put here some facts on the slide, like something that 42% of the world's population is living in the BRICS countries. It contributes to 18 to 22% of the global GDP, and it has generated more than half of the global growth in the past decade. So it's something you shouldn't neglect. It's quite an important economic engine. And within this framework of the BRICS nations, there is an existing space cooperation agreement with Brazil and China, which is considered as a role model also for other countries. So this cooperation works already extremely good with Earth observation satellites, and that's something what could be extended to all BRICS nations. So on the summit in 2019, the nations agreed on a BRICS partnership on new industrial revolution to strengthen the digital economy and connectivity, among others. And that, of course, implies always, if you go for digital economy and connectivity, it includes space resources. And while in 2015, there was still talk about a BRICS space station briefly, but that is not followed up yet, or not to my knowledge. However, there was a memorandum of understanding on cooperation in science and technology and innovation, and space research and exploration, aeronautics, astronomy, and Earth observation are explicitly mentioned. So in the meanwhile, a solid cooperation project in the area of Earth observation is underway. And in 2016, the program director of Roscosmos, Igor Komarov, commented to that initiative that the practical initiative, I quote again, the practical initiative on which we are now working together with the BRICS countries is a data exchange and distance probing of the Earth, which will help in quicker responses to emergency situations, natural calamities, pollution, and other aspects. So I believe it will find rather prompt and very important practical use for the BRICS countries. So taking this initiative a step further, a BRICS space project, a joint satellite constellation comprising selected national satellite resources, is currently in the making. BRICS, one thing to remember, the next thing to remember is the SCO. And please, can you advance to the next slide? SCO, that's the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It's not a program for space. Can you, Adriano, can you please give us the next slide? Yes, indeed, that one. So the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is the biggest regional organization to date. Its objectives you can compare, I mean, we here in Europe very well remember the Helsinki Accords, or the OSCE, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And that's something what is similar to the, it's a similar structure which was set up with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO. It's a forum which aims at security and trust building measures in the region, and its cooperation on political, scientific, technological, cultural, and economic aspects. So I mention it because those are the things which are political, but they do play a big role. In particular, if you look at the next slide, please, Adriano, which explains us a little bit about the new Silk Road project, the Belt and Road Initiative. Yes, indeed. So all those organizations, UPSCO, BRICS, and SCO, are a very important component of what is considered to contribute to the new Silk Road, or the Belt and Road Initiative. Since 1989, when many countries in the world changed social and societal setup, so since that time, 1989, and driven by security concerns, China embarked in Central Asia on a new neighborhood policy, supporting the now independent post-Soviet states in economic development and social stability. That was the proclamation of the new Silk Road Economic Belt and Maritime Silk Road, or in short, One Belt, One Road. Now is it called Belt and Road Initiative? So it had many names in the past, but now we call it mainly Belt and Road Initiative. So this establishment in 2013 is a consequent continuation of this strategic move to establish a friendly neighborhood policy in that region. On top of that, for the revitalization of the bridge between Asia and Europe in order to address uneven global development. So among other strategic partnerships, the Belt and Road Initiative is using the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the BRIC member states as an enabler for this broad global initiative. So what is it then? So comprehensive space infrastructure like the Chinese Beidou satellite navigation system and the Russian GLONASS are ready to feed space applications, which are essential for the realization of the Belt and Road Initiative. So the Belt and Road, to say in a little side note, is complementary to the Eurasian Trade Zone, an initiative by Russian President Vladimir Putin. Can you please advance to the next slide? Oh yeah, so Vladimir Putin confirms that for us, China is a key partner in the region. I think this picture says it all. No further comment needed at this. So thank you very much. And please go to the next one. And I think that's already my last one. Wait a sec. So what do we do with all of this? BRICs, with Belt and Road, with APSCO, Shanghai Cooperation Initiative. All right, so the Belt and Road mega project of economic and social development is perceived as a broad and multi-layered economic as well as geopolitical scheme. It comprises two main components, as we saw on the previous slide. So the overland connection, the so-called belt, consisting of a grid of several major economic corridors, major rail or fiber optic cabling, energy pipeline projects. So whatever you can imagine as a land-based infrastructure. So the second component, or the second main component, is the sea-based road, which covers maritime routes, ports, canals, submarine cabling, cargo handling infrastructure. Even new air routes and air travel hubs will contribute to an air Silk Road. All of this encompasses the terrestrial infrastructure. So symbolized here by the globe in the middle, the Earth. So that terrestrial network is going to be supported and extended by space-based resources, the Space Silk Road. So this is what we see, the globe inside another layer or another hull, the Space Silk Road. So if you want to, this is something what I introduced just to illustrate how far space programs go and how important it is. So this terrestrial network is supported by the Space Silk Road. So that's the Space Silk Road, the components you can imagine as the satellite navigation system, Beidou I mentioned, which provides like a glue or a digital glue for the infrastructure on the globe. And when you now click, please, then you will get introduced to another layer. This is the digital Silk Road. Can you please click once? The digital Silk Road of the 21st century comprises a Belt and Road space information corridor, including several elements reaching from Earth observation, communication and broadcasting, navigation, ground and application system construction up to space application product development. So, for example, joint laboratory initiatives, science park cooperation initiative, technology transfer initiative, and much more will enable a full integration of science and technology into a digital economy. So China encourages the integrated development of the Beidou satellite navigation system with internet plus big data, cloud computing, and supports the integrated positioning and innovative utilization of satellite navigation together with mobile communication. So I could continue with all those keywords, wireless LAN, pseudo satellites, ultra-wide band and ad hoc network signals, and you name it and you name it. Internet of Things, geographic information, satellite remote. So all what you can imagine. So this is coming together into this digital Silk Road corridor of the 21st century. And then on top of this, even on top of this all, if you click again, so this is where I could imagine that the state of the global connectivity enabled by this multidimensional infrastructure network, this provides for us here on Earth the basis for the mass participation in economic processes, for mass innovation, so for constantly mass entrepreneurship, because everybody is able to connect because of space infrastructure provided by all those different layers. Can you please click one more? And this is where I imagine like a final layer or another shell around everything, the economy enabled by all those layers beneath it. Such a model of a shared economy could unleash everybody's potential to promote social equity and justice. And this is a concept of this sharing economy, which was really spelled out by the Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, as when he said that our understanding of shared economy is one of mass participation, so everybody can participate. That the economic globalization and the spread of the internet have provided a big stage, a stage for everybody all around the world, and a broad space for entrepreneurship. So space in the sense of room and opportunities for entrepreneurship and innovation for the people, by the people. So we will combine innovation with grassroots initiatives, the online and the offline economy, and normal commercial companies will be connected with research institute because it's possible. So individual efforts of anybody, of market players, will lead to greater synergies for innovation-driven development. So if that is something what we can achieve by space, so that's then something where everybody can take part and can benefit from. So that's the vision which is connected with the development for space in China, coming out from China. So if we want to take it as something what could be also useful for us, of course, that's for up to us, because every country anyhow has a different culture or a different direction it will go. Imagine that all people could be their own entrepreneurs, so everybody could be their own boss. So that means technology paves the way for every person here on planet Earth to get with just small handheld device like a mobile phone or with a laptop or with a notebook, that you can get connected to the whole world, to the global market, and you can make use of it to secure your own existence, so independently. But technology is the ultimate tool, literally a hand-sized tool to empower ordinary persons like you and me. So you just add your human ingenuity to set up your own virtual or real workshop, or your virtual or real production, any type of virtual or real service, independently and freely. So infrastructure enables the distribution of the produced items or services, and the winner is of course the creator of the production and not only the manager or the owner of the business. So that is my vision for maybe a bright future where economic dependencies, the biggest killer of creativity and motivation, are just taken away. And the traditional dialectic contradiction between capital and labor is just fading away, and everybody can unleash its own potential. So science and technology at the end are democratizing economy, most likely the global economy. So this could become an optimistic vision for humans, for all future on planet, for all people here in the future on planet Earth. Or like the Chinese would probably say at this point, for the magnificent goal of constructing a community of shared destiny for mankind. And that's what I wanted to introduce to you today. And this is what I wanted to stress, what space can become if it is not only a flight for going places, but for going for humans on Earth and enabling progress here on Earth, and then for everybody here on Earth. And this is where I would like to conclude. And I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for this overview. I think China has been underestimated for many years, and it's a very potential nation, and it shows this every day more with the Silk Road and other activities, and now the space, ambitious space activities. Also congratulations for this lecture, and beside all the struggling with yeah, internet connection, and yeah, as I told, we are in Germany. Welcome in our world. We have a first question from Thomas in the chat. I would like to forward to you. How is China reacting and engaging with new space? For example, SpaceX, Starlink, which proposes to put 40, even 60,000 satellites in space to establish a network with a truly global footprint. What do you think about this?
Right. Yes, indeed. That's a very good question. And of course, it springs immediately to your mind. And indeed, yes, there are initiatives, there are companies establishing itself. There are a very big number of commercial launcher companies emerging in China, as well as satellite manufacturing companies. There are, at least to my knowledge, 4 or 5 plans for mega constellations. And if you really want to know everything about it, I would like to recommend to you this YouTube channel by my colleagues and friends, Blaine Curcio and Jean Deville, Dongfang Hour. So if you type in on YouTube Dongfang Hour, you get it all. They speak Chinese. They're partially based in China. They read the Chinese news and they summarize every week the news coming out of the commercial sector in China. And there you will be even amazed more than today what is already available and what is ongoing there. So yes, and I think it's a nice connotation to say the inspiration for commercial space did come from the US. So there was like the Chinese are really observant. They look around what is happening in the world, and then they see, could this be something what is also good for China or could be useful for the Chinese nation as a whole. And indeed, SpaceX was a big inspiration. And all the youngsters, they are all young, dynamic, and very ambitious people. They always say, yes, I saw SpaceX and they can do it, so we can do it. So, and there's also, with the technology development, you can also see sometimes they also get a direct inspiration how to build a rocket or how to do certain processes or how to do certain mechanisms or engine fuel, in which fuel to take or which trajectory to take. It's a direct inspiration from SpaceX. Yeah, it's worth to look into it.
Bernard, as the next question, I would like to give you the word because there's no more question in the chat.
Okay. Thanks very much, Jacqueline, for a very comprehensive overview of the history, the Chinese space development, and also very, very deep view of how the current development is embedded also in a bigger, connectivity network and so on. But I have a question related to, how this is relevant for exploration? Because, for instance, now, in parallel to this huge effort, the Chinese economy, the Chinese development, the road and belt, so space exploration is partly aside and partly integrated. I see that they have had their very well-defined step-by-step plan, and we have been part of this collaboration. The Chinese robotic exploration program, the astronaut program, where we try to open the International Space Station to China, but the US refused. But now they have their beautiful Tiangong 3 station, and it's going to be built up. Next year we'll have some 3 more modules added to it, and there will be even a free flying telescope. So amazing opportunity with 1,000 scientific experiments available. And of course, they have also announced that they are studying this international lunar research station with Russia. And so how does this can also take some synergy with the road and belt and with other big economy investment to have something developed for space exploration?
Right. Now, Bernard, I think you know much better than me that the science program in China took off. It took a long while to take off. So it was very late coming into the big equations. So space science has been a latecomer, even later than manned space flight. And what they are doing right now, and this also emerges from this concept of the roadmap 2050, they looked into the questions. What are key questions for the medium-term future? And then they took it very targeted. That they looked into dark matter was one strong point, and they looked into quantum telecommunication, which was another strong point, because they saw there's not much done on the international level, and they saw here China could contribute in case they succeed. And they are also, I think, they are on a good way to succeed in those focus points.
But for deep space exploration, deep space exploration, I mean, you know, we were so proud. We launched the first mission of this millennium in Europe, Smart One, in 2003. But since 2007, China has launched 8 probes to the moon.
Right.
So the Tango 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, some of their precursors.
Yes.
I think that they are really far ahead, and they have a mission, Tianwen on Mars. And of course, they benefit from a very big infrastructure that they share with some of the military logistics and so on. So clearly, they could be establishing a moon outpost, a moon base that on the same model as the Chinese space station could be of benefit for everybody on Earth. So actually, how do you see that this development is on the side, or is it very integrated with the big priorities of the country itself?
Oh yes, that is definitely integrated. I'm 100% convinced of that, because I was not reading too much on this roadmap scheme, because it clearly says they develop key technologies to apply them. They don't develop a key technology just to have it and then forget about it. So this is first point anyway. Then in the cooperation context, now China has always been keen to. There's a in my references, you see the publications by Gregory Kulaki, who says they wanted to have a seat on the table, which they never achieved. Now the table is now set up by them, and now they invite right. So international cooperation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, indeed. Now, but this is a good comparison, because they also they develop like that. So they have components like this is how a Chinese menu reads in the Chinese restaurant. You have basic ingredients, and they get combined in different ways, and then you have 10,000 dishes. But the basic ingredients are maybe 10 or 20 or the most 30. But the combination of it makes it so rich and so versatile. This is what they also do with the space program, definitely, because you know probably very well that the lunar program, the Shanghai program, is the pathfinder for the Mars program. There are even certain teams which shifted from the lunar program straight to the Mars program to bring in their competences, their knowledge, and to go on with further development step by step. Now imagine something here in Europe. I will not remind you of the Aurora program, which was conceived in 2001, and there's nothing. Program, extremely nice, ambitious European initiative, but where are we? So that's one of our weak points here in Europe, and this is where China is extremely good. They do good analysis. They know what they want. And then, of course, the strong political support makes them going. And once the budget is there, they go. And there's nothing what stops in between. They go and they do. And that's one of the good points about it. And I sincerely regret that we are seeing right now a certain division, that we have the Artemis program at the one side, and that we have the International Lunar Research Station on the other side. Now, but if you look again on the map, if you see Russia, China, Asia Pacific, and then, I mean, Europe, we are here, we are there, of course, we wanted to be the bridge, but this is where I see us failing, and is a big regret I have about that.
Yeah,
So,
but
Bernard,
if
you
on the other hand,
please.
okay, there are now 2 space stations, so there will be
Yeah.
2 moon bases, and hopefully
Yeah.
we can find some good interoperability between them, and then beyond the political conflict, we'll be able to establish many moon village with various actors. Now, I had one specific question about China, is that road and belt. Now, at the moment, it's only the surface of Earth and a bit of space infrastructure, which you have mentioned. But could we include in this space infrastructure the moon? So could we, do you think that there are also push to extend road and belt to the moon? Because that would be very much
Now,
on the line of what we're seeing in Space Renaissance.
yes. Now, I'm not connected to the internal circles in China, but maybe you can propose that, unless they haven't talked about it already. That is a good question, which I cannot answer, but I think it's a continuation of this, what is getting bigger and bigger and including more regions. But maybe you should make it more loud and clear, Bernard. So
yeah, okay. Okay, good. But this was very helpful.
But before I give Adriano the next question, give me a second. He had 2 more questions from the chat I would like to forward. One is there's been a lot of developments since 2016. How is China's roadmap incorporating and reacting to the near-term emergence of vastly enhanced launch capacity beyond Earth orbit?
Yeah, I will add my question so you can answer all together. So it is amazing the achievements of China in the last 3-4 years, because they made a lot of things on the moon, including a mission on the dark side of the moon that is the first in the world. And they have now a rover on Mars, and they are going ahead, and they have their own space station. And so all of this is really striking. What can I say? So I read a couple of articles in the last 2 months about some more astonishing programs. That's they wrote that China is designing a very big orbital space station to be built in Earth orbit. This is one thing, and the other thing, they are developing their own version of a fully reusable 2-stage-to-orbit. That means SpaceX Starship. So are these 2 articles just fake news, or is there something serious that we should know?
We should definitely know about it. That's a very good idea. Yes, Adriano, we should know more about it. That's indeed true. Now, first thing, one word to this big infrastructure, this 1 kilometer big infrastructure in space, which was put into discussion on the web. And indeed, it's a study. It's a pre-study of what would it take. So what if?
Okay.
There is nothing in place. There's nothing now in hardware development, but it's might be a good concept. But we have to keep our eyes open how far they get with that. That's all what I can say at the moment. And it was published by official sources in China, so it's reliable news. That's one point. Then the deep space capabilities, there is definitely a launcher in the making, which would enable a Mars sample return mission or a human manned landing, according to the roadmap again. So that development is approved and on the way. But from the latest, what I read is that a manned lunar landing might not be based on the very heavy, 120-ton payload capacity launcher, but they consider right now, that's really the latest news from 2 weeks ago, 2 Long March 5 adapted configuration to have 2 launches, one crewed launch, one cargo launch. They meet in lunar orbit, where they would then, where the crew would go into the lander and then land on the moon. So that's the latest idea how they want to tackle that. And the projected aim for a human lunar landing by China is in the time frame of 2030, 2033, roughly, in that thing. And there was a third point. Please help me if I forgot something.
I put you the question in the chat now, then you can read it. Maybe it is easier for you.
There's been a lot developed since then. Launch capacity beyond Earth orbit. Yes, there is now. That's again state governmental developments for a heavy lift launcher. Then I remember this vertical takeoff and landing or reusable. Yes, also it's not fake news. They're working on it, but I have no deep insight on how far they are. But there are even commercial companies working on a reusable launcher. But payload capacity, I don't know from the top of my head. That I have to say, I would need to look it up.
And the same added to this question, things like Starship, Neutron, etc. are going to be transformative. Question. I go back to SpaceX again, but Musk's ambition to reach Mars is a lot more credible now than it was then.
Yeah, now I cannot say much about Elon Musk.
Okay, then is here another question from our audience here in the Zoom. On the backside of the moon, a small biotope was taken. Are there other projects aimed at expanding the biosphere?
Yeah, okay. I think if I read this question properly, it was not the one which flew to the far side of the moon. If I'm not completely mistaken, it was Chang'e 4. Yeah, Chang'e 4 was on the back side, on the far side.
Yeah, there were some plants and flies.
Yeah. Now look, I'm not so enthusiastic about this experiment. It started as an educational experiment with seeds, insects, and it was supposed to be a mini closed loop biosphere, what of course was not really feasible in the short term development. What at the end, what obviously there was a photo that a cotton seed sprout on the far side of the moon, and that was a tiny seedling, small shoot coming out. But there was also a photo, and that this was sometimes referred to as the first plant on the far side of the moon. That was the engineering, the ground experiment, which was started at the same time, and that of course got much bigger. But the one that really sprout on the moon was just, you could just see the leaves. And to be honest, when I saw the photo, is it really a leaf or not? But that was a really premature, a very basic experiment. It did work to some extent, but that was just a very first start for something.
A great symbolism. A great symbol.
Yes.
And they are doing a lot of life science experiment on Chang'e.
Oh yes. Close loop. Yes. Life system. Yes, we are all working on it, but some do it. Huh? And that's also one of the strengths of China. They are just to be clear again. The technology, the advancement of technology in certain areas is not as good as in the US. So definitely Mars exploration. There's only one leader in the world right now. That's NASA. Period. There's nothing else to said about it. But they are advancing, and they are advancing quickly. And why do they advance so quick? Because they do. Instead of debating or discussing for decades, they do. They might be perfect. It's not always fancy and shiny and glossy, but they do, and they gain experience. And by doing that, they advance quicker than we do with our decade or with year-long discussion via PowerPoint and nice slides and fancy pictures. But we might be inclined to learn from them how to make progress in a quick way. But then, of course, I just point out to Bernard again, you know how Europe works. It's 28 or 20 odd member states in the European Space Agency all have their particular interest, and they have their industry which need to have a fair return. And then we are already getting into a complex trouble discussion. So yeah, you have to look into the complexity and into the details. And not everything is applicable for Europe, or we cannot learn from all those progress they are making, but certain things we should maybe take into consideration, which could maybe help us.
Okay. Bernard, do you have?
Yeah, so I have also a question, because of course, we talk about China, but clearly it's a very important is the relation with the US. So I have two questions. One is the simple geopolitical question. So do they invest also in the Pacific Rim economy, which includes the US, the Pacific Rim? Because clearly they have a big territory and also oceanic territory in the Pacific. And so there a way where they are going to develop also some economy, and also how, so you have shown also that for instance, in space, they are very open to cooperation with the US. So at the moment, it's more from the US side. From the legal point of view, it's very difficult for US for investigators to be part of, to collaborate with China. But are there some neutral areas where we could see that we can trigger some positive collaboration that would involve both the US, China, and Europe and other parts of the world, South America also for BRICs and so on?
I think the best channel for something like that should be the United Nations. And in this respect, you know, Sanne, the United Nations Office for Outer Space. Yeah. Because at the moment, I do not see any other forum where the US, Europe, and China could get together in a very open and unbiased way. I'm failing to see something.
There are existing inter-university collaboration between American, US, North American University and China. And so they are not subject to some of the same restrictions that, for instance, NASA has. And so there have been a very good exchange of students and research until the last 2 years. And so that could be a channel where with science, with not too much advanced technology, there could be some good progress. But clearly, I mean, we have to say also China is, they say they want to train 1 million new engineers. And so they are inspiring the Chinese population to do that. And so they are going to train more and more brilliant minds. That will be very useful for the whole world. Huh?
Oh, yes. Oh, and they do. And they do. I mean, that's also one of the tasks of APSCO, this Asia Pacific Space Organization. Or if you look at Beihang in Beijing, the Beihang University, students from Iran, from Turkey, from Cambodia, they have it all. They have it all. They clearly have programs for capacity building in not so developed nations, what, by the way, also UNOSA is doing, but China is doing it fast forward, I would say. Yes, and those are the ambassadors for the next generation of space engineers. So if they go back into their countries and have a close connection, they speak Chinese, they have a cultural experience, they will pave the way for closer cultural and interhuman relationships with China. Clearly, yes.
Yeah, and a practical question. So in the last 1 year and a half, it's very difficult to travel to China. So there are very big pandemic restriction. So are this, is it still open for some high-level professional activities, or it's, or are there some territories which are accessible to both China and the rest of the world where we can, for instance, meet?
You mean?
Are there some, yes, for instance, okay, 2 years ago, I went to Hong Kong, and so this was well connected to China, this was well connected to the rest of the world. Are there other places where, for instance, if you want to continue a deep discussion with Chinese colleagues, where we can go now, we can travel?
Mainland China is difficult.
It's very restricted, huh?
But is even from Hong Kong to mainland is almost not possible.
Ah,
now,
yeah, maybe Macau,
right? Yes,
okay.
Right. I don't know whether the Chinese will go to the IAC this year. I have no idea. However, there are online conferences, and there's definitely one in November for the Commercial Aerospace Forum. So, Bernard, if you still want to contribute, feel invited. Mm-hmm. Online, yes, but direct contact is difficult right now. Yeah. From what I, and they do not shift to different countries to compensate for that. That I don't see.
Okay. Good.
Mani is mentioning to this before I give Julia has another question. Mani is mentioned that China is very effective at moving forward with the technology and resources they have, while other countries play politics and compete against themselves. It's true, but I don't see them pushing nor supporting civilian space development. You are right, actually, but they want to construct space habitat. And I don't know if you mentioned this, Jacqueline, the space habitat. That was lately in the news, and this is a big thing what they are doing, and this has to do with civilian space development, and they will develop this in the next 20 years, I guess.
Yeah, it's coming. It's also still in the beginning. Also, culture, art, museums. It's just in the beginning. But you know, China is really a funny country. Once they get into gear, they do it big. They might be slow in the beginning, but once they start, so for example, there will be an extremely, I think, one of the biggest planetaries in the world opening in Shanghai soon, with cultural venues all around, and our initiatives. Beijing Museum has just opened an science and art cultural exhibition. So they are starting, but indeed, yes, there should be done more space education and all those things which connect us humans with technology and science. Yes, I think there's still a lot to do. However, if you have ideas, as I said, there's a forum coming up in November. So if you want to display, show your ideas, please go ahead, make it happen. Yes, why not?
Okay, Julia, you wanted to ask something?
Yes, I'd like to say thanks for your presentation. Very good, very good information, very informative. But I'd like to complement the question of Sabine. I believe she's talking about it's a space analog station in Gobi Desert. If you know more about, we saw some photos from the space analog facility, but more recently I'm not more hearing about. I'd like to know if you know something about this initiative.
Yes, I do, and indeed there are even two Mars hubs in the desert in the north of China. So it's one is purely educational purposes, so it's a tourist project, and the other one is a bit more sophisticated, and they do consider to use it also for astronaut training. It was big in the news 2 years ago. It got a bit quiet around it, but I know a photographer who has been there. So if you want to have a look at his photo reportage or his photo documentary about it, just let me know, then I give you the link, and you can maybe even get in contact with him if you want to know how it was there and what are the details or what is actually ongoing there. Yes, those two projects I have knowledge about, I know about.
Okay,
Mhm.
thanks.
Okay, so I would think we can close this webinar. Maybe you can give me a smile that I take a photo for our moment. I will close the chat here.
Yes.
So, and now a smile, yeah. Thank you. So we will publish this on Facebook, and thank you very much for this informative lecture, Jacqueline, and for doing that in so
Thank you.
short-term time.
Thank
Yeah.
you for your patience. You made it.
It was
All
amazing.
obstacles.
For
That's
the
amazing.
audience because of the technical problems, but we will solve this in future in the
Yes.
next century. And stay tuned. On 4th of October, we will have also a special guest, and I'm so happy that we could get him. It's Robert Subrim, the president of the Mars Society, and afterwards, there will be the Mars Society convention. I'm also a member of the Mars Society, so I have to make a little bit advertisement for this. And stay tuned. We will have a lot of activities also regarding art, science, and connection. And Adriano, you want to say something before I say
Yes,
goodbye?
don't forget to join the Space Renaissance crew. The membership campaign is open. The yearly fee is very low. It's just 24 euros per year. So please, everybody, join. Go to the website, spacerenaissance.space, and look for join the crew link. Okay?
Everybody has to bring 10 crew. Everybody brings 10 friends.
And
Yes,
we
that's
are,
how we
Excellent. Okay.
and we are also pleased.
Each webinar, we will win 10 new members. That will be a very great things to do.
And I wanted to point out we are a non-profit organization, and any donation is welcome. Please look at our website, and you'll find the link where you can donate for the Space Renaissance International, because we want to bring humankind into space. We want to bring art into space. Actually, everyone. Okay, I wish you all a nice evening, and
Great.
thank you.
Bye to everybody.
Thank you.